Hello guys, this is Nestor. I'm gonna teach you a little bit of the history of Latin America or Spanish America literature. So this is the index. We're gonna start to talk a little bit about the antecedentes, how the Hispanic America literature was developing. So we're gonna go to the origin. We're gonna start to talk about the pre-Columbian literature. As you may know, pre-Columbian civilization was that civilization that were living in South America before the arrival of the Spanish. The Aztec Empire, and before them the Maya Empire, and the Incan Empire. Well, after that, we're gonna talk about modernism, which is the main movement who ends the 19th century and starts the 20th century. And well, then we're gonna have a look in the whole 20th century. We're gonna talk about the most important parts of the Latin America literature in the last century. Well, first of all, as I told you, we're gonna talk about the literature for the Maya Empire, for the Aztec Empire, and for the Inca Empire. Well, just like a brief summary. As you may remember, the Spanish will never met the Maya. They didn't exist with the Europeans arriving to the American continent. All that we know about the Mayan people is thanks to the Aztec Empire. All we know about the Mayan Empire, Well, but we know they have like two big works, like two main books that describes perfectly their story. Those are Popol Vuh, which sounds familiar to People's Book, and that's what it was a book for the people, a book which explained how to work the land, how to treat your children, and also it was a kind of mythological book. It talked about the origin of the world. They talk about the end of the world. Maybe it sounds familiar to you. That's a couple of years ago, in 2012. Apparently there was a Maya prophecy that says that the end of the world is going to come on the 21st of December of 2012. Well, that prophecy was in that book. As you can see, the picture of the right, this is their solar calendar, looking at the sun and looking at the stars. They make that kind of calendaries that were able to prophesy the eclipse or the moon cycles. About the beginning of the world, about how everything starts, they thought, and well, the Popol Vuh said that they were made with corn by the gods. So let's say, and the Chilam Balam is basically the same as the Popol Vuh. It also tells mythological stories. So let's say that at least what we have now about the Mayas is basically cosmogony. Cosmogony means how everything works in the world, just to be clear. Well, about the Aztec Empire, Aztec Empire is a little bit more interesting, as they have two systems called Cuicatl and Tlahtoli. Those words are in Nahuatl language. That's language which is still spoken today, and it was used by the Aztecs. Cuicatl is what we can understand now as poetry, and Tlahtoli as our narrative, let's say. They use it also not in a fictional way as we understand it today. I mean, they use those Quicotel and Tlahtoli as in a similar way to the Maya. They just tell stories about themselves and about the past. And now about the main author for the Aztec literature, what is called Netzahualcoyotl. I know it's a pretty weird name. He was a king. He was the king of Texcoco, which is one of the biggest cities in the Aztec Empire. And he developed a rich poetry about, it was quite eco-friendly, let's say. He talked about the nature and how can we take care of it and the importance of take care of the nature. Well, talking about the Inca literature, the most interesting theater are the quipus, which are those kind of knots you see in the picture, colors knots, because they don't wrote the literature, so it was not literature per se. It was a different way to tell stories. Well, with quipus, they using a wide variety of colors, strings, and sometimes even 100 notes, all tied in various ways at various heights, and they use it to record dates, statics, account, and even represent in that abstract form key episodes from a traditional folk stories and also poetry. The Abac Chinese, that system with colors, they use it in Asia to calculate. It works in a similar way. Each node has a value, a number, and you can combine them depending on the size, depending on the color. So yeah, it was a quite interesting literature. By the way, you have to notice that all of the literature, even the Maya, the Aztec, and also of course the Inca, what we have now, it was totally manipulated for the different religious orders that went to Hispanic America same time as the conquerors. Because remember, the conquest of Latin America was both military and religious, spiritual. So those religious people manipulate their literature to adapt it to the Occidental culture. Just one example. The Aztecs believes in a great number of gods. One of them was a goddess actually called Tonantzin. The religious tried to modify the vision of the Tonantzin and adapt it to the Virgin Mary. And with the fusion of those two godness, Virgin Mary and their own godness, Tonantzin, they create a mixed figure called Virgen de Guadalupe, Tonantzin, Guadalupe Tonantzin. They still call it like that today. So you cannot firmly believe this literature because it was totally manipulated to conquer their culture, to delete their roots, to delete their history, and put instead of it a European vision of the world. So that was all for this lecture. Thank you very much, guys. I hope you enjoyed and see you in the next one. Hello, guys. Welcome to the second lecture of this history of the Latin America literature we are doing. In the previous one, we talked about the roots of the Spanish American literature. We talked about the Mayas, the Aztecs, and the Incas. Well, now we're gonna talk about the Indians Chronicles of Indians. Well, they are basically the stories of the first Europeans in the Americas, what they call the Americas or the Indias. Remember that Christopher Columbus, they believed that he was discovered another way to go to the India. That's why it's Chronicles of Indians and not Chronicles of Americans. Well, this text starts a new style, a mixture between medieval historiography and fantastic literature. Among the most important chronists, we have Christopher Columbus, actually. It was the first writer to Chronicle of Indians. We have Hernán Cortés, remember, the conqueror of Mexico. Well, the conqueror of the Aztec Empire as well. We have Bernal Díaz del Castillo, who was a soldier commanded by Hernán Cortés. We have Álvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca, who was the first Spanish to go to the United States territory, to go to Florida, and to live with a native tribe. And we have also Ponce de León, which is maybe the most famous because he tried to find the fountain of the eternal youth. Well, first of all, you have to consider that when the Europeans arrived into America, everything was totally new for them. They not even how to know, they can't even name the things because they found big trees and they didn't recognize which kind of trees was it. They found different animals that nobody have never ever seen them before, like coyote, chacal, different animals who are originally from the peninsula of Yucatan or from Mexico. So they have to invent, they have to create the story. They need to tell to the people what were they seeing at that time. They needed to describe the environment of the new lands. So they just developed a new language. The writings of the Chronicles of India is that like they're surrounded by a magical world in which everything is possible. Actually, some of the chronicles, the last letter of Cristobal Columbus said that he was in the Eden. So he was in the garden of Adam and Eve. That was the kind of thinking of the Chronicles of India. Well, another example, Christopher Columbus, again, in the first journey, he thought he was watching sirens, sirens in the sea, when actually they were a kind of whales. So they owed to the rest of the crew to sign in a book. They were actually watching sirens. So it is a kind of weird. It's a special literature and it's very characteristic from the Spanish literature and Hispano-American literature because there's nothing similar in another language. Well, and after that, it was developed between the 14th and 17th century. And then it becomes the Barroco de Indias, Indians Baroque, let's say. And here we have the main figure of the Baroque of Indias, which is Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. Well, the Baroque of India is his main theatre is that it's a literature opposed to the authority of Spain, of the peninsular Spain. Of course, the authors seek to study the American reality regardless of its origin. The idea will be the germ that will advance to the identity claims that will give rise to the American independence movement. Well, while Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, she was born in Mexico. By that time it was called Nueva España Virreinato, Viceroy of New Spain. And he was a feminist, let's say, proto-feminist. She was a nun and author of both religious and worldly poems, pagan poems. She started to write since she was very young. He has the support of the local government, but all her life she has to struggle with the authority of the peninsular Spain. Another important writer by that time is Sigüenza y Góngora, Carlos de Sigüenza y Góngora. But the main figure is Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, and now we are gonna read one of her most known poems. If you want to have more information about this amazing women, you have a TV show in Netflix. It's called Sor Juana and it's amazing. So if you have the chance, just watch it. And we go with her poems. I'm gonna read it in Spanish, and you have the translation at the right side, right? This is just a script. I mean, it's not the whole poem. If you want to read it, the whole poem, it's called Hombres necios que acusáis, just as the first verse. So, there we go. Hombres necios que acusáis a la mujer sin razón, sin ver que sois la ocasión de lo mismo que culpáis. Si con ansia sin igual solicitáis su desdén, ¿por qué queréis que obren bien si las incitáis al mal? ¿O cuál es más de culpar, aunque cualquiera mal haga, la que peca por la paga o el que paga por pecar? Here is a very feminist poem. She's claiming about why is the church, the Catholic Church, blaming the women for the sins. As we see in the last paragraph, it says, who is more to blame, even if both do act incorrectly? She who sins for a wage or he who pays for sinning? He's talking about prostitution, of course. She is a defender of the women, regardless their work or their status. Actually, she died very young. She was working in a hospital, treating a mortal disease, a deadly disease. She refused to leave the place, and she died helping the people. So she's a very interesting woman, and we're gonna finish this lecture with her. Thank you very much, guys. Hope you like this lecture, and see you in the next one about modernism. We're gonna jump into the 20th century. Bye.